how do we read more? That's the question, right? So, okay, I've convinced you. You should read more. You know you should. What are some really practical ways to do that? Well, I have a couple tips. One, find the time that works for you. So read in the morning. Hugh Jackman has talked about this recently, that he and his wife read aloud to each other in the morning, before the craziness of the day, before they go running around to meetings or lunches or the work that they have to do. He says read in the morning. And I like that idea. When I was younger, I used to read in the morning. Now I have young kids, so that's not really my time. But like, find the time that works for you. So reading in the morning can work really great. The William Osler, who's the founder of Johns Hopkins Medical School, is a big fan of the Stoics. He recommended that his students read the Stoics or Montaigne or Shakespeare. He says read before bed, right? He says slow the day down. He's talking about the relaxing power of reading. That's another great thing. I read before bed every night. I try to carve a little time. The other thing I do, I try to read while I do other stuff. So I've talked about this before. When I eat, I go to my office and then I read while I eat lunch every day. And that's sort of a quiet time where I read. Yes, the problem is like, this is a book, this book is 15 years old now, my copy, and there's like Chinese food stains in it from when I lived in Los Angeles and I was reading it. But anyways, the point is, find the time that works for you, and then make that time that you read every day. That's really important. I'm not saying you schedule it, but it's like, hey, when I eat, I read. I read every day when I wake up. Or I read every day before bed. I'm also a big binge reader, so like I'll go on the sort of spurts. So there might be a week where I read several books, and then there might be a couple weeks where I'm not reading, or I'm just really struggling with one book. Like a book like The Power Broker might take me a couple weeks, but I'm always reading, and I'm reading short books and long books, but I binge. I get obsessed. I get sucked into subjects, and I just go down that rabbit hole. So don't think that it has to just be this ritualized, like these are the times I read. Yes, generally slow and steady wins the race, but also what really matters is you're just getting through the books, right? That you're making the time, whether it's in batches or like Bill Gates famously has these think weeks. I'm sure he reads a ton on those think weeks. And that probably helps him average out over a lifetime to reading a lot. So again, whatever works for you, don't be okay with binging if that strategy works for you. Right now, that's not what I'm doing, but when life changes and I'm traveling again, that will probably change. The other thing is this idea of reading a page a day. Obviously you should read a lot, but I think what I try to do in the Daily Stoic is like how can you spend a year with the Stoics? 1 page, 1 meditation a day. We also do the Daily Stoic email, which you can sign up for, dailystoic.com/email. But there's a couple daily books I read. I read this book called A Poem for Every Night of the Year. I read a daily Shakespeare book. I read a book that Tolstoy wrote called A Calendar of Wisdom. I have all these different daily books that I like. And so reading every day, like 1 page every day, is a way to just really do a deep dive into some content. Don't just read. You have to have a reading practice. So I've talked about this before, but I'll show you. So when I read, I don't just read the book and then I'm done with it. I read, I take notes, I use these flags, I fold pages. So when I'm reading, I'm making notes. So you can see some of my highlights here. And I'm highlighting what I like. And then later I transfer this information over to note cards, right? And this note cards go in what I call a commonplace book. And a commonplace book is a way for me to organize and catalog and capture the information that I read. So again, reading isn't just this thing that I do when I have a few spare minutes, although I do that. When I'm reading, I'm actively engaged with the material and I'm cataloging and capturing the information so I can apply it in my writing, in my talks, in my videos. I can apply it in my life. I have different sections for all the things that matter to me in my life. I have a section of parenting stuff. I have a section of philosophy stuff. I have Stoicism stuff. I have strategy. I have examples I like from history. My book, The Obstacle is the Way, began because I took a note card from a book called Pierre Hadot, where he talks about turning the obstacles upside down. And as I collected more and more cards about that, that's how the book came. So catalog and organize the information, build a reading practice. This is really important. And then also the art of rereading, right? I think reading a book once is great, but how do you evolve with that book over time? Marcus Aurelius talks about how we never step in the same river twice. So people are like, oh, how can I find more books? Maybe you actually don't need to find more books. Maybe you need to go back and revisit the books that have really changed you because you've changed since you last read them. Seneca talks about how we have to linger on the works of the master thinkers. Don't always be chasing the new things. Really engage with the material. So this is my copy of Meditations, and I have a video about how to read Meditations, but I have read this book hundreds of times, literally more than 100 times, and it's filled with notes, it's got all these different notations, different pens, different marks, because I've read it so many times. I have chunks of it memorized, and it's engaging and re-engaging and engaging and re-engaging and taking notes and using it and applying it that's allowed me to understand it at a level that just would not be the case if I just flipped through it once. My copy of The Great Gatsby, which I've kept, I read it once in high school, I read it once in college, I read it probably 2 or 3 times in my 20s, I've read it once in my 30s. It's a book that I've grown with and I've changed in how I see Gatsby and how I see myself and how I see the 20s. Even this year I gained a new understanding of the Roaring 20s, fully kind of wrapping my head around the fact that that book was about a period of time that was a reaction against, or was the next step after the great influenza, after the Spanish flu, after people had been locked down, after millions of people had died, after this terrible tragedy, people wanted to party and go crazy. And so my understanding of Gatsby will be different if I read it again since the pandemic. And so the art of engaging and re-engaging with the material is really, really important. So I would, if you're like, how can I read more this year? I would actually tweak that and go, what books can I reread this year? The decision to make time to read has been the single greatest investment of my life. It's changed my life. It's opened up countless doors for me. It's made me financially successful, but it's also helped me manage that financial success and also manage the stresses of that success. People have learned hard lessons by experience. They've gone through what you've gone through. If you're not going to make time, if you're not going to learn how to make time, you are rejecting that wisdom, and that's ridiculous. So I hope this helps you make some more time for reading, carve out time in your life, follow the examples of the Stoics. And of course, if you want a book to start, here's some: The Power Broker by Robert Caro, Roman Honor by Carlin Barton, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Seneca's Letters. If you want to check out my books, The Obstacle is the Way, Stillness is the Key, Daily Stoic, Ego is the Enemy. And I would say the last thing, if you are looking to build a reading practice, we built this thing called the Daily Stoic Read to Lead Challenge. And it's like 2 weeks of exercises and practices and sort of steps that will help you have a great reading year. You can check that out, dailystoic.com/reading. Hey, it's Ryan Holiday. Thank you so much for watching our videos. Every day I send out an email inspired by the best Stoic wisdom, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, all designed to help you live a better life. That's what I'm trying to do. The email takes 5 minutes to read. Over 300,000 people get it. That's the largest community of Stoics ever in the history of the world. I'd love to have you check it out. Totally free. Unsubscribe whenever you want, but I think you'll like it. Sign up at dailystoic.com/email.